All right. Good morning, everyone. I know it's been a while. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I'm gonna be making content again. So, at least on YouTube, I wanted to talk to you guys about OP and chatbots. That seems to be a really interesting um, area of potential growth and just potential, just to understand the system better and to even refine the system. The reason I say this is because, first of all, I mean, this was presented by Dave a couple of weeks ago. I don't know when, but Dave, I mean, he's been kind of hinting that he's been working with ChatGPT, or I think he's using Google Gemini, but he's been using chatbots for quite some time now. And there was kind of this conversation around like this kind of the ethics around working with chatbots, right? You know, like with artificial intelligence or the potential for artificial intelligence and like, the ethics behind that. But one of the things Dave did was he shared like a bunch of slides where it's like he's basically training the chatbot on OP. And so since then, you know, I've been really, I don't want to say inspired by that, although that's also true, but it's like I realized that that was an avenue for lack of better terms, exploration. And so this is basically going to be me showing you how I train. I use ChatGPT in particular, but I think this could work for any chatbot personally, as long as it has some sort of memory feature. So I would recommend, what I'm about to show you for anything that you're trying to understand or work with OP, whether it's just like conceptually or even like doing exercises on working on your demon. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. This should be a little bit faster, I hoped. But let's see. Let me just double check that you guys can see this. Okay, awesome. So this is my ChatGPT 4. So I actually pay for ChatGPT, which I know might be a little bit of a like, why would you do that? But I do have my reasons. Number one, I like working with the latest models. And number two, if I'm not mistaken, it gets more memory, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But basically, what you're gonna want to do, so if you want to train ChatGPT to have like a meaningful conversation with you in terms of OP, first you need to get a baseline understanding, right? What does it know about OP? Now, due to it, I mean, OP's been around for a while and ChatGPT has been trained off of the internet, right? So, as well as I think the feedback from many other people who I'm sure have talked about OP in some regard, including myself. So, it's kind of gathering this information. But it has a baseline understanding of OP that I didn't have to tell it about, but sometimes it's wrong. So, I'm going to give you an example using social types. So, I will usually ask it a question. What do you know about OP social types, right? Like, I just want to know. And so it ends up giving me the animals, right? So, and I think the reason for this is because this was trained off of information up till 2022, I think. And the social types only came out like last year, like 2023-ish. So there's no way for it to know. So it's going to give me information about consume, blast, play, and sleep, which is obviously wrong. But it has some understanding of OP. So this is good. Like, so I don't have to train it from scratch. I can just say, so from there, I basically train it. I'm like, okay, it actually got updated. Would you like me to teach you? Right. And then I don't have NI or I don't really have an SI on social types. So what I then do is I'm like, okay, I'm just going to feed you information and then we'll refine it together after I feed you this information and you spit out your understanding. Right. So what I then do is let me see here. I probably should have shared my screen. Let me go ahead and do that. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share my whole window this time. Or entire screen. That's probably right. All right. So from here, so OP has several resources that you can leverage when it comes to any topic. So namely, it has the ebook, it has its terms library, and it has the class notes. For me with social types, I didn't really like what it had in the ebook. It was a little bit too vague, but I did find what was in the terms quite interesting. So for example, you would go in here Oh, I didn't even notice this. I think there was like an OP socials. Did I miss that? But anyway, sorry. So if you go into the term that you're looking for, these are very outdated, granted, but it's like there's something of the idea that's still in there. So even though it's kind of wrong, where it's talking about like number ones are A players and number fours are D players, which I find very condescending and honestly untrue. Like, I'll still feed it, right? Because it's my responsibility to refine its understanding, not the other way around. So it's like I will feed it some of this, especially because this first paragraph tells you where its origin comes from, right? So it's coming from Gregory Clark. I think that's important to know. I think their assumptions about like the where the trait's coming from is important to know. So I'll feed it that. And then I also decided to feed it the class notes. So hopefully you're able to see this still. But the class notes is pretty awesome. You can go into the socials, and this is what I did. And I just fed it all of this. Now, again, these are outdated language, especially since we switched responsibility for generalize. And I think ego first of all, ego is like totally outdated. We switched ego for flex, and it's even used flex here. But again, it's my job to clear all that up for it. So then I fed it all this, and then it spits out its understanding, right? It's like, oh, okay, it looks like it's now updated. Here's what I understand. And again, it's not completely right? Even in terms of the terms, right? It's calling it A players, B players, C players, D players, which I don't like, right? So then it's like, but then it will ask, it's like, how does this breakdown sound to you, right? Is there anything that we need to clarify, right? And so from there, I just start fine tuning it, right? So it's like, I used Flex and Friends personally, because I'm like, all right, I don't have time to really talk about this revolution that's happening right now. What you're going to want is you're going to want to see the memories updated. Now, this is at least for ChatGPT. I don't know if this works for other things like Gemini or Meta AI or anything like that. But you're going to want to make sure that the memories are being managed appropriately, right? So, and if you look at the memories, it's like you have, it just stores information really from like a long time. But I would say, where would it be stored? I guess I don't want to sort through all this, but it's in here somewhere, right? And what you're going to want to make sure is that either the memory is like visible here or in your list, or if it doesn't have a memory feature, I would recommend keeping all of your OP related content in one window, right? One chat window, because it's going to feed off of that like knowledge. The cost of that though is that it might start getting a little bit slow, but I feel like it's still worth it. And so then as you see, it gets updated, and then I test it. This is my next step. So I will test its understanding, and I'm like, okay, give me some examples of each social type. And it did a pretty fucking good job. I did not tell it any of this stuff, right? So it has Steve Jobs, who's officially type number 1, Kobe Bryant, officially type number 1. I don't know about this Sheryl Sandberg character, but Elon Musk, I'm pretty sure, was typed as a number 2. I could totally see these 2 people being number 3s, and these 2 people I'm pretty confident were typed as number 4s, right? And I'm like, okay, you got it, right? So that's step 1, right? To train it to its understanding. Then you can then have a conversation. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of conversations that I find pretty meaningful. So the first one is about like just concepts, right? One thing that I'm trying to do in the future is I'm going to want to make a video about the root pattern of number 1s, but I guess this will spoil it because I'm using ChatGPT to help me out. This is basically I asked, what does number 1s and number 4s have in common, for example, and I thought that social impact was a pretty insightful thing for it to say, and I think I might talk about that in a future video as well. But then also, I then started asking what I really wanted to know, like, what do you think the root pattern is? And so it started off by saying like self-assertion, dominance, legacy. And I'm like, I'm kind of like, maybe, I know there's kind of a conversation about like the whole dominance, especially in the OP community right now. I don't really know how I feel about that because, but then I just have a dialogue. I'm like, I've been typed as number 1. you have a lot of memories on me. Like, does this fit? Right. And it's like, and it will start adjusting. Right. And, that is basically like, we had a really great conversation. And the long story, very, very short, I fed it the updated information about the internal drives from the Q&A from Dave yesterday. And then we kind of ended up with these kind of insights, right? It's like, it's more about inner drive. There's a delayed collaboration. It's not like we don't work with people, but it's just delayed. There's the internal validation over external recognition. And then there's also a potential for apathy, which I think is something that's not always talked about with the number ones. It's like number ones can get very aimless, and it's like they're like almost dead inside, right? I'll speak for myself. That's how I feel when there's not a clear direction that I'm moving towards, right? So that's one example. The other example, I'm trying to think of oh yeah, here's an easy one. This is something that I do pretty much every morning. And this is like, I'll just ask it, let's just do an activity related to my demons, right? This is my last animal. And I'm not going to show you, but I basically trained it using several examples from the community of what SF sleep is. And I was like, all right, like, just let's train me in this skill, right? Let's train me in this area. So this is an example of, I like personally telling it to do it step by step, because I don't like getting just a huge list of things to do. I just want it to be interactive personally, but you can do it however you want. And so that's basically what I do. Like, it kind of focuses more on like sensory experiences, like quite literally. I don't know if that completely has anything to do with OP, but this does calm me down. And then it kind of gets into like reflection, which I think is pretty important, integrating the insight, which I think is very important for sleep, and things like that. And I can kind of adjust. This is kind of the core prompt, but it's like I can adjust it as needed, right? So for example, if I'm feeling like especially like discouraged that day, or if there's a particular topic I want to process, like I've been watching Vinland Saga a lot, which I found very meaningful, I will say, okay, let me actually show you a new one. So I could say something like, hey, let's do another SF sleep activity related to, that helps me reflect and integrate insights from Vinland Saga, right? So let's just see what this pops up. All right, might be a little slow. So it's leveraging the memories. It knows that I've been thinking about Thorfinn and Canute a lot from the story. So it's leveraging that. But I feel like that's good, right? So it's a little bit more tailored. But this is the insight, right? This is how you do it, right? I'm gonna stop sharing. And I think that's about it. I think that's how I would recommend using chatbots to help you with your OP understanding. I hope this was helpful. I'm gonna probably post this in Facebook as like a comment on one of my posts. But that's about it. If you have any insights, questions, or even concerns, because I know that some people get like really concerned about like the ethical or even privacy aspects of like using chatbots, and I think that could be worth talking about as well. Just let me know. But yeah, and as far as content goes, I'm probably going to start making videos probably bi-weekly or monthly, depends on what I'm thinking about. But probably somewhere in the weekend range, right? So between Friday and Sunday is when I'll drop. All right, thanks.